Really appreciate the opportunity to join this event today, and really pleased to be following Blaine Parker because a lot of what I'll be touching on in terms of actions and things that can be done resonate well on what Blaine and close with for me. I'm Justin Bush. I'm the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife's Aquatic Invasive Species Policy Coordinator. I have been in this role for almost a year now, and prior to that, have about 16 or so years, both in Washington and the state of Texas, preventing and managing invasive species of all types. Wanted to take a little bit of a different approach. We'll touch on some priority species, but also want to talk about pathways, actions, and funding, and some opportunities to work together to solve these shared challenges. Thinking about what our efforts look like with aquatic invasive species, looking at our core functions, we focus on prevention, early detection, rapid response. When we respond, we then look at infested site management if something can't be eradicated. A lot of our work is done in coordination with others, and our state authorities only apply to state lands. They don't apply to tribal lands or federal lands, but we have the opportunity to support federal agencies as well as tribes upon request. When we think about invasive species don't cross, they cross jurisdictions and they don't respect those boundaries. So for us to be effective, we must work together against this shared problem. We also do a significant amount of education outreach. Really pleased to see this event happening. We really can't be speaking about invasive species and opportunities to work together enough. And then another piece that we look at is enforcement. I'll start off with what our enforcement efforts look like. This is led by the Department of Fish and Wildlife's enforcement program in collaboration with our fish program that I oversee. We operate mandatory watercraft inspection stations at our borders. We have 5 stations currently, and we anticipate having more in the near future. Really looking forward to the Quagga Mussel webinar in the near future to talk about what we're doing as a state to increase our prevention, our readiness, and our rapid response capabilities due to the potential issue in the Snake River that Blaine talked about. We also, when something is found, it's decontaminated. We have the ability to issue decontamination orders. We can also hold watercraft or other aquatic conveyances for a certain amount of dry time in order to kill the biological life. We also regulate possession, release, and trafficking. All invasive species are connected to human activities in some way. Some things are intentionally released, and some things are intentionally moved to new areas, and that's something that we address as well. And then education and outreach is a big piece, and we are fortunate to have a mussel sniffing canine in Washington. We're looking forward to getting another in the near future, but we also have an education trailer that's available with the sides pop up, and there's specimens and educational materials inside. And wanted to spotlight both the canine as well as the trailer, because if you're hosting events and you would like to partner with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, we'd be happy to organize that to bring either the trailer or the canine. Regularly goes to schools and other events. The other aspect that we look at is prevention, led by our prevention section, looking at species classification. What is an invasive species legally, and is it prohibited or regulated? Meaning, how do we address it? Leading decontamination efforts. We have really great protocols, and I'll put a link in the chat that we developed for any field use. And what we don't want, I think invasive species practitioners are very thoughtful about our actions, and we're really good about cleaning our equipment, our boats, and our gear. But other natural resource professionals may not be as keyed into that. And so I'll put a link in the chat, but would be happy to share information on that and even organize a future decontamination webinar or workshop if there's interest. Permitting and regulation, early detection monitoring. We have monitoring done at over 300 sites in 60 different water bodies every year, looking for new introductions of invasive species, including northern pike, as well as quagga and zebra mussels, New Zealand mudsnake, and a slew of other things. When something's found, we then take action. And again, the thread that weaves the whole program together is education and outreach. And thinking about what Blaine Parker just touched on with the Snake River detection of quagga mussels, it's never been more important for everyone to be aware of simple actions you can take to prevent invasive species of all types. And for aquatics, it's that simple message of clean, drain, and dry. So cleaning everything off, letting it dry. And that's a really simple way to prevent the spread of invasive species. It's really never been more important at this time. One of the things that is one of our priorities at this time is the European green crab. And this is a globally damaging invasive species that poses a significant threat to shellfish, eelgrass, and estuary habitat used by salmon and many other species. You can see here the key identifying traits. It's 5 points on each side of the carapace, as well as the 3 rostral bumps between the eyes. But the 5 spines on either side are the best way to identify it. We always tell people that they're not always green. People look slightly different from each other, and crabs are no different. They can have a variety of different colorations. So the 5 spines are really the best indicator. And they can be up to 4 inches wide. So we hear a lot about, is there an economic use, or can you eat them? And the reality is, in Washington, would prefer to eat Dungeness crab and would prefer to protect their habitat as well as their young. We saw an exponential growth of European green crab on the coast as well as the Salish Sea, which led to Governor Jay Inslee in 2022 to declare a statewide emergency, directing the State Department of Fish and Wildlife, tribal co-managers, shellfish growers, and other partners to work together to address this growing problem of the European green crab. And this emergency order continues today. Every 10 days, we report on our actions and make a recommendation to the governor. This has been a really great example of how organizations can work together against a shared threat, such as the European green crab. And when you work together and you have a vision of what you'd like to achieve, it's easier to get limited resources. So with the emergency order and working in partnership with tribes and other partners, we were able to receive $6.3 million annually from our state legislature. And again, when I say that no one organization can solve this problem because it crosses jurisdictions, it's shown how that's true in successful collaborative management in response as well through our budget, with the lion's share of the funds actually being passed through to tribes and other partners. I'm really proud of this effort, and we're making some really great impacts. We are at the point where we've built a foundation of response across the state and the Salish Sea and the coastal branch, the 2 different branches of the emergency, to the point where we're almost to the point where we can make some broad statements about the trends and the success that we're seeing. But things to celebrate is together we've eliminated more than 361 European green crab from the coast in the Salish Sea in 2023, working in partnership with many different organizations, including tribes. And the thing to celebrate is that there is effort happening in Puget Sound for early detection monitoring where the crabs are not known to be. And even though there was significant effort, we found no European green crab. So we can look at all the European green crab being removed from other areas, and it seems like those efforts are protecting the areas that don't have the European green crab. So really pleased about that and happy to be celebrating that.
Justin, just about 3 minutes left.
Thank you. Wanted to note that we're developing a 6-year management plan, and this includes funding recommendations for the next 2 years. If your tribal nation is not plugged into our process, I invite you to connect with me so that we can talk about putting your actions as well as your funding needs in our strategy. So what's interesting is that ballast water and biofouling is a contributor to a lot of the priorities that we're talking about, both in the marine and the freshwater environment. Think about what Blaine just touched on. Quagga and zebra mussels came to the United States through ballast water. European green crab, for example, came to the United States through ballast water. Wanted to spotlight some things where we can take action together to address this pathway. So the Vessel Incidental Discharge Act establishes national standards to set the standards for ballast water management, and the EPA is setting those standards. The U.S. Coast Guard then is implementing those standards once they're complete. We have been participating in this process for quite a while. Certainly would love collaboration to address this issue. What you can see here in the timeline is that the EPA is just about to publish its final standards, and then the U.S. Coast Guard will then be publishing and starting its rulemaking process of how to implement that. And this is a really critical moment in time where we can address some of these concerns that we have. And what the concerns we have is that best science is not being used. The proposed regulations are less stringent than the current permit that was issued in 2013. So we're actually not strengthening our protections. We feel that we're weakening them. The EPA is attempting to regulate biofouling, and we're seeing a lot of ships being cleaned in Washington waters, which is a huge risk. And this actually would create a pathway for that to continue to happen. And then also the EPA is failing to protect US waters through in-water cleaning. So would love to talk more about that. And please reach out because we could use all the assistance we can get. And then wanted to talk about federal appropriation. So Blaine mentioned that we need to find more resources. And as a department, we've been really aggressive with federal appropriations, such as a grant to address coastal invasive species. We also have been advocating for an $8 million increase to the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs Invasive Species Grant Program for invasive species priorities in the Northwest region, trying to fund operations for European green crab management for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, trying to fund research through U.S. Geological Survey, and then funding the U.S. Department of Agriculture to assist growers with mitigating the impacts of the green crab. And really the most important point, and what I would love to talk more about if anyone is interested, there is a federal gap in coordination with addressing marine invasive species. And there used to be a NOAA Office of Invasive Species that was funded by earmarks. And that really was the lead federal agency that provided grants to tribes, to states, and others to prevent and manage marine invasive species. That funding went away, and as did the office about 10 years ago. And there is a gap that has not been filled at this time. And really pushing hard to get reestablishment of this office. And this is supported by a recent Aquatic Invasive Species Commission that was a multi-organizational effort to create a report and recommendations for how to truly prevent aquatic invasive species. And that's all the time I have. Wanted to focus not only on some priority species, but on some actions. And if we truly want to get ahead of aquatic invasive species or invasive species of all types, we really do need to work together to advocate for better laws, regulations, as well as funding to support our efforts. So thank you all so much.